Right, I'm back in the CRUD to-do CRUD.js file in the modules, and I just here, as you can see, I just collapsed the state, get all new to-do and delete if you're wondering. So I can just quickly go down to this one. I'm gonna make a few different things, so I don't forget, I'm going to import a few different things up here because I need them and I don't want to forget them. I want to use the use route and the use router, so we can both. This one I can actually wait with, so I'm going to mark this one out, but I'm going to use the view route from view router for now, because I want to use this to grab the param ID, so I have a specific ID that I can use for the next part of it. In my ref, I'm also going to be use computed to store information that I will receive in a moment. So next part is, remember this one, that it needs to be inside, because I did a test and I put it outside and it didn't work. It needs to be inside this get to do's here. And what we need to do in here is we need to do const route equal to use router. Just use route like so. That's the first one we want. And I'm going to copy this and do the same with router. Whoops. Keep the E and set an R, and I'm just going to mark this out for now, which will be used later on in the system. Do a little bit more space. I'm also going to create a const called todoID like this, where I will be using the computer property, and it looks like this specifically. So in the Vue2 you would do, instead of a method, you would do computed and then parentheses. So here you just like use it as part of when you're calling your functions here or variables. And inside this I do a function arrow, a fat arrow notation, which basically I'm binding some data to, and I'm going to use the route params, there we go, and the ID here. So with this on, and then I can console log, oops, it was faster than I was, to do ID. So what errors do we have right now? So we are assigning to do ID, there we go. That was not an error. So actually we can go check to see if we get this in our browser. So I'm going to clear this one over here. I'm going to go to do, I'm going to click, so we can see we get some information here. I'm just going to add a little test in front of it, so, or let's call it to do ID, so it makes a little bit more sense. So save, and we're going to refresh again. So now we can see we get our computer ref out here, right? It looks a little bit weird with data, but that's how it is. But we can see we get some data out, and that's what we want to for this example here right now. All right, so let's mark this console out. Maybe we'll use it later. Just to go check again. Now we're not using. Okay, I'll leave it because it's right now. It's actually using this because I haven't created anything left. So I'm going to leave it for now. So back in the. Oops, I clicked something. Back here, if I click one of these specific items here, right, and I go to my view, I can see that I'm already. Where did it go? I'm lacking some information here to control which item I am. I have my params ID up here, and I want to present the data that is attached to this one with this number. This was FFF, many FS, right? So this is the ID that contains the many FS. And I want to store the ID in here so we can then use it to retrieve the specific data only for where it isn't updated, the specific data for this one only and not the other ones, right? So this is the next step we want to look into with our code. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom after the edit here, where I'll be making the new constant here, which will be filtering out the other elements. So instead of having all the elements, I'm just going to use the one with the specific ID, right? So I'm going to create a const called to do. So a new one that is a ref, which will contain only the single information that we are using for the single object we're using from the to-do items. In here, I'm going to create another constant called get specific to do, like this. And I'm gonna make it an async one because we've been using those for a while now for most of the systems. So this is the standard setup for these specific things. And once we're using a async call, we need a try and a catch for this one, right? So the catch, I'm just gonna make it really quickly. I'm gonna do this, an error, and console log the error if we have one. Great. Inside the try here, we're going to set up the fetch that we already kind of have for other things. So I'm going to steal this one here, actually, because it's basically the same. So we do a fetch. We're going to go to, we're not going to go update. We're just going to go for the to-dos, which is this specific part here, and forget or remember this closing tag here. So this is the first part. Just go to the route here, which grabs all the information. Then I could go up and copy, I guess, this one too, because why not? So I don't have to type everything from scratch again. We have our data that's being responded. Oh, this is not this one. This is not the body we grabbed. It is the JSON. So all the JSON that exists there we want. This is not redundant. And the last thing we want to do is inside of this here, right? I'm gonna do this. We're gonna rename this to data, because now in this promise here, we get it, this is resolved, we go to the next one. The data inside of this one is where we want to start filtering our information. So I'm gonna type the left part of the equation first and then add it to something after. So I'm going to do data, the data we receive here. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to filter it like just a total standard filter. I'm going to call the iterative name is just T. You can call it whatever you want to do if you want to. And I'm going to do the filter based on the ID. So underscore ID here, right? And I want to set this equal to something specific. And if we scroll up here, I want to set it equal to this one because that's the param ID that I get from this one up here. So if the param ID, or the param ID has to be the same down here. So if they are the same, then you would take the data you get from this, remove everything else or filter everything out, and then store the remaining data. So we're going to set this equal to todoID.value because we're working with refs. And I'm going to pop this data into an object or a variable called todo, which is this one up here. This is the ref up here. These two are the two things I'm going to set together. And since I've been doing these few things, I also need to export the specific things I want. So I need to export the to-do, the specific to-do, what's it called? Specific to-do, just call that, and then the to-do ID, so I can use those in my to-do details over here. So down here, I'm going to do the first, I'm going to do, and then to-do ID, and then get specific to-do. So these are the three things I need to export from this one here, and then I can go back into my, oh, I'm going to save, or maybe a few errors, no errors, excellent. Then I can go back into my to-do details, and then I need to start accepting them in here as well. So I'm gonna grab the get, oh, here we go, get specific to do, and to do ID. And I also need to return my to-do and my to-do ID since I'm using them throughout the system. So let's click save. Let's see what issues we have. So we get specific. That's because it's assigned a value, but we're not using. So I'm going to load it here. So get, capital G, get specific to do. So we want to call the function in here. So it starts doing the filter. Right now it's just grabbing in everything, but we needed to run the filter. So let's click save. Let's go to a browser and see if we have errors. Oh, it already worked. So I'm going to go for the CCC instead. So again, if I click this, you can see author, to do, CC, and information. And if you have the view open, I'm going to go console, that's fine, no more issues here. If I click the, in my case, the to-do details, I can see down here where it's being populated different things. So I have state, where I have new author, and this, again, this is for the, when we do the next part of the video with updating, sending this information, but this works. We have a to-do that's empty. We don't need anything in it. This is, we're just grabbing the state from where the to-dos were, right? Then I created a new to-do, where'd it go? Here. So this to-do is being sent along since we passed it down here. And this contains an object which here, as you can see, matches the ID. So the ID, and it also matches the route because that's, the route is being stored in the ID. And then we're using the ID to only grab the information based on that ID. So we don't get a lot of other things, right? So that's what the filter down here does. Great. So the next one, how do we actually make it update based on what we send in here?